Okay, good morning, everyone. And welcome to another year of Art Fair Talks. Nagkakaproblema rin ako sa gadgets ko. That's why I'm looking at my laptop here. I'm Herrera, Director and Chief Curator of the Ateneo Art Gallery. We have been an education partner of Art Fair Philippines since 2017. So we're on our 7th year. So Art Fair Talks program aims to supplement the many exhibitions featured, including the special projects and incubators. I especially want to thank the organizers for allowing us to feature 2 exhibits currently on view at the Ateneo Art Gallery, namely the exhibit of Mark Custignani and the group exhibit featuring Kiri Delena, Lisa May David, and Jacqueline Reyes. So there will be 2 sessions within the 3-day program that will touch on these 2 exhibitions. But today, for the first session today, was prompted by recent collaborations of contemporary artists in the field of the sciences and technology. The merging of the arts and the sciences was pursued centuries ago. In the Renaissance period, the context was more in terms of highlighting the individual, the genius that is the artist. Today's art projects, however, go beyond that. They are more grounded in addressing the needs of a community and our environment, or in making sense of our past as well as how we deal with the threats of today and the future. Today's session, we entitled Converges and Collaborations in Art and Science, feature 3 projects. I would say they've been completed, but perhaps they will take a life of their own, in the future, hopefully. Okay, so our first presenter, let me just go to my... No, wala. Sorry. Go. Our first presenter is David Laran. I read his brief bio earlier, and I said it's quite envious that he can say that when he's not working, he can be found surfing and playing mahjong. That's what I remembered. But of course, David is an art curator working in the intersections of queerness, spirituality, and ecology. In 2021, he co-founded Emerging Islands, a coastal art residency in La Union, Philippines, working to create interdisciplinary stories of the archipelago rooted in community experience. In 2018, he also co-founded Limbo, a midnight gallery in the red light district in Makati, programming around the subaltern realities of Metro Manila. His work as curator is process-focused, working primarily with artists during the creation phase to help them understand the personal motivations behind their material and conceptual frameworks. And for today, David will be sharing with us a recent project that they did with a French artist, if I remember. Sorry, I don't... A French-Japanese scientist or artist? Artist, no? Yeah. I forgot his name anyway. But also, it's a project that they collaborated with the Mind Museum. Is it still ongoing? Okay, so there you will see the exhibit that was a result of this collaboration. So, David, please take the floor.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Ms. Spitz. So today, I will be talking about a project called the International Ocean Station, which is again a project we did with Alliance Française de Manila and the Mine Museum with an artist named Cesar Jong Herrera. But before that, sort of brief introduction about Emerging Islands too. We're founded in 2021, and we are a coastal-based Arts for Ecology organization. Initially founded as an art residency, we have evolved over time to do very active community projects within and outside La Union. And we do many things, but at our core, we work with artists and scientists to tell the story of our communities and to collectively respond to environmental issues such as climate change with art making. Okay. So in 2022, we founded a program within Emerging Islands called Paaralang Kapuluan, which means Archipelago School in English. And what it is, essentially, is our own version of a school, but a non-brick-and-mortar school. It's informal infrastructure to stage encounters between art, ecology, and community through expeditions and art workshops in an effort to shore up ecological ways of seeing and being and decolonize ways of creating and storytelling. Okay. So just sort of a background about La Union. I don't know if you've all been to San Juan, La Union. It's a province in the Ilocos region. It's 4 hours north of Metro Manila. And it's where we live and it's where we do our work. La Union is a very interesting place. It's sort of a new world kind of cut out of 3 different provinces. That's Pangasinan, Ilocos, and the Cordillera region. And it's a strip going all the way up north. And the whole province is basically coastal, right? Just last year, the province issued a call for a climate emergency, and we responded to that by creating this zine with the Tadyar Library and Tadyar Foundation in La Union, and Quago, a zine maker collective, to basically voice out, the kind of climate situation in La Union. And this zine is just one example of a place self-determining their own climate future, in a place with changing weather patterns, increased rainfall, and unpredictable intensity of typhoons, coastal erosion that is, largely changing the topography of a coastal town, right? All this is happening largely by the influx of tourism in San Juan. But La Union is finding ways to fight back by dreaming up its own future, and that's where we try to come in. Okay. Now, we feel that art offers a sense of possibility and play that can help us think about problems and iterate on solutions in unconventional ways and unconventional settings. And this is really what happened with our resident artist, Cesar Jong Herrera, who is an artist, scientist, he's sort of an inventor, brimming with childlike wonder, and an educator in the Singapore Institute of Technology. And Cesar approached us with a dream, and he called this dream the International Ocean Station. Okay. Inspired by the International Space Station, the International Ocean Station captures a similar spirit of adventure that drove the international race to the moon, but takes a decolonizing, community-based approach to scientific imagining. Cesar believes that the IOS should be like the sea, free and accessible to all. If any of you have watched that sci-fi show Foundation, which is a Isaac Asimov adaptation, right? It builds on the same idea of a foundation, and really asks the question, what knowledge do you want to gather, into a structure such as the International Ocean Station? And where would these stories come from? Like, what knowledge precisely is the question we were answering. So, what we dreamed up is very different, though. We didn't dream up, a behemoth of a station that goes all the way up in space. It's not one thing that we wanted to create or that we want created in the future. It's not a thing that costs $150 billion to make. It's not elitist, not slow to make, and not just programmed with one function, which is to observe global warming. We wanted a community-based solution in the form of an international ocean station that is archipelagic, meaning each community has their own station. So in a sense, it's inclusive of communities, it can be done fast, and it can be a vessel for addressing global warming with nature-based solutions. Okay, so this is his goal for an actual ocean station, but that takes many steps. And for us, what was crucial was to see, like, where does that process actually begin? You know, who gets to decide how an international ocean station gets built? And we felt like this is the opportunity to make sure that our community is the wellspring and the springboard for such a creation. Now, this project took 4 stages. First, research and materials gathering, community workshop, prototyping and assembly of architectural models for the international station, and an exhibition, one in La Union, and eventually one in Manila. Okay. So the first step was to do research. So we partnered with 7 community organizations covering youth and environment and surfing to ensure that our process was shaped all throughout by a diversity of perspectives. We also collaborated with beach cleanup volunteer organization Doers of Dalumpines, basically a group of rangers who wake up every day at 5:30 to clean up their own beaches. People, you know, tourists don't really get to see, but actually make sure that the place is alive and healthy. And a few other youth-led organizations working in environmental governance and conservation. Next was to do a community workshop. Okay, so we invited different communities around La Union to help us imagine what the iOS could be and what it could look like. And over the course of 6 days, 6 basically iterations of the same workshop, kind of done with different communities. We conducted this workshop with over 120 people, including turtle patrollers, surfers, mangrove stewards, fisher folk, indigenous people, high school and college students, artists, environmentalists, activists, and even toddlers. So really, the whole place, you know, in a way represented. What we did was we drew and made models together. We told stories and listened to others tell theirs. And, and some stories really, and some stories we really took to heart. Okay, so this one story, for example, is the story of a college student named John Rick. Forced to fend for himself at a young age, he made friends with fishermen who taught him how to fish. Recalling different memories with a heavy heart, John Rick yearned for the International Ocean Station to feature a functional rest stop for fishermen going on long fishing voyages like he once did when he was younger. He now studies public administration in college and wants to someday help local communities secure a future. There's also the story of our friend Ate Josie, who's a mangrove steward from Bawang in La Union. Her community has been waiting for the government to reopen their mangrove eco park for more than 2 years. They're being told they have to wait 7 more years just to open their public eco park, which they steward themselves. Their dream is simple. Within their own mangrove ecosystem, they've always wanted to have a floating restaurant, and so they wanted to add that to the International Ocean Station because they dream of a time when they can finally earn a livelihood from the ecological work that they are already doing. There's also the story of Kuya Jesse, who's a fisherman turned patroller for Kurma, who's a turtle conservation organization in La Union that we also partnered with for this project. He taught us that sea turtles encourage the growth of seagrass, which is where the fish like to lay their eggs. He learned how to look for turtle nests not from Kurma, which he currently works, but from his father, who knew when to go on patrol just by looking at the moon. Okay, so this was an example of really crucial local ecological knowledge that we wouldn't get elsewhere. And that kind of story inspired us to include a marine biology station in one of the architectural models of the iOS. Okay. So the main question was for us was, how do we use art as a platform for gathering stories together and for thinking of solutions to the ecological crisis? And for us, we answered this question with another question. The question was, what if? What if we were all kids? Okay, what if we all silently agreed that the most potent force in the room could be our imagination, because we were allowed to let it loose? What happens then? For us, it was a very simple and effective process that tapped into, again, the powerful imagination of a child and, the very efficient logic of a child who asks, very simple questions like, what is this? Why does it do it? What does it do? And in a very simple process, we just asked them to first describe the thing you want added to the International Ocean Station, and then draw it on a piece of paper, and then we build it. We built it with stuff we gathered from the beach and from our trash cans. Okay. And then after they built their own models, we asked them to act it out, right, in a scenario that befits them, that befits their lives, that reflects their daily lived experience. So in a little skit with these tiny Lego models, right, we had everyone participating kind of recount their daily lived experience, but with the International kind of Ocean Station in mind already. Okay. Next up was to gather all these initial prototypes from the community workshop participants and to build actual sort of baseline architectural models that would, that could be someday built. On the top left, you see the Fisherman Rest Stop from John Rick. On the bottom right is the Biodiversity or Marine Science Lab, inspired by Kuya Jesse. And on the upper right is a rainwater catchment system, which is quite important for an international ocean station to have its own kind of life support systems. Okay. So, we assembled these things ourselves. Took a week just to kind of hand paint everything white. It was a very fun kind of thing for us to do. All of this in preparation for the next step, which is to exhibit it. And we exhibited it twice. First in La Union, where we gathered the same people we work with, had merienda over sunset, and just really processed all these creations together and kind of given them an idea of where it could lead after, right? And the next step was to bring it somehow to where, a lot of the conversation around science kind of coalesces. And it was launched in November in the Mine Museum. It's a semi-permanent installation. You can go check it out. It'll be there for a couple of years. But having this in a museum, we understood it is somewhat a crucial step. It isn't the last step, but it's a crucial step because, a place like Mine Museum apparently attracts around 2,000 students every week. That's 8,000 students a month, around 100,000 students a year. And that's potentially 100,000 future scientists, engineers, artists even, who get to see what coastal life is like and get to see that ocean science can actually come directly from coastal communities. For us, exhibiting this in the Mine Museum also represents a crucial step in decolonizing the very idea of science and what gets to be called science, and reconfigure a space to accommodate community and citizen science. Okay. Again, it's also not the last step. We did this with dreams of actually building an international ocean station, really materializing these architectural models to life. Now, Caesar, our partner artist, is actually already working in Bali with a community there, a mangrove community that has been displaced by a resort, to build a hydrogen sequestering solar-powered floating station. And this shows that, community participatory design thinking can actually be the basis for implementation. And so this is where we're working towards. Hopefully we find people down the line who are empathic with, the motivations of this project and are willing to support. And someday we hope to build our own international ocean station in La Union. So that's it. Thank you.
For the second presenter, we have Ms. Belen Ponferrada Thirkell, a museum education professional with extensive experience in conceptualizing and implementing initiatives for a wide range of audiences in diverse communities in various museums. She was affiliated with, among them, history and art and ethnography collections. The multi-trajectory direction of her professional work insists on connectedness and links between distinct disciplines and between disparate cultures that find their way into projects. In recent years, her focus has been on disseminating science research in an accessible manner as part of the communications and advocacy team at the International Rice Research Institute, with the end in view of increasing knowledge, support, and trust in scientific studies. She will be presenting a recent collaboration that they did with four contemporary artists, in line with the recently held International Rice Conference held at the ICC a few months ago. Belen, please welcome Belen Ponferrada.
Good afternoon, everyone. The exhibition All Tomorrow's Harvest happened 4 months ago at the PICC. It was in conjunction with the 6th International Rice Congress that was held in the Philippines. The IRC, as it is commonly known, is organized by the International Rice Research Institute, by IRRI, but it was the first time that it was held in the Philippines. The first few editions of IRC have always been gathering of scientists presenting research breakthroughs in their studies. So there have been many big plenary sessions, small breakout sessions, thousands of scientific posters presentation, and trade shows as well, as part of the IRC component. But in the most recent one, we tried to introduce something new, something different. We toyed with the idea of including art. But it was a very uncomfortable proposition for those who were seated in the planning committee table, because as you know now, we are more comfortable with the idea of these careful boundaries between disciplines, between fields of study. So there were suggestions of an art competition, which I was not very comfortable with for many reasons. But I was keen, and there were some of us who were keen to get the help of art to help us communicate what is the most pressing, what we believe is the most pressing issue, global issue of our times, which is the impact of climate change. It's not exclusively the domain of science. It has to be the concern of everyone. And so it was that a decision that art was going to be part of IRRI 2023. Now, at IRRI, every year we have what we call the seed grant scheme. These are awarded to young scientists for innovative research. We tried to develop the art seed grant using that template. And I had to think hard and also reconnect with former contacts, because I have been away from the art scene, the art community for a long time. Now, it helped that many years ago I was embedded in the art community, and so it was easy for me to revisit the network by way of a former student, Dindin Deborah Araneta, who made the initial selections for us and also assembled the artists. And she eventually became our designated curator. Now, at this stage, people were still uncomfortable with the art thing at IRRI. But I needed to remind them that science was better elucidated by artists as far back as the Middle Ages. You remember our botanical prints? The work of the science was better explained by the artists at that time, and it was all through their help that their works were better understood. That I convinced them all. I also founded the idea that Dr. Einstein said that the greatest scientists are also the greatest of artists. They didn't believe me. But what prompted Einstein to boldly state that is because he believed that the greatest scientific minds are actually the most creative. When we think of science, it's probably the most boring of processes, because you think of data, of facts, of evidence. But in fact, it takes a great creative mind to use those technical abilities to create something that's more than just evolutionary, but revolutionary. Now, Dindin activated her network and came up with a short list of artists, and she introduced them to us when she assembled them. And I do not know these young people prior to that initial meeting, but I was very pleased that soon after that we discovered synergies, which I think was wonderful. We started throwing ideas. What were our starting points? There was the idea of Greg Brillante's short story, The Distance to Andromeda, primarily because we've latched on to the idea of a farmer visiting an exhibition marking the 100th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing. We reread that story, all of us. We also talked extensively about science fiction and futurism, and in the process expanded also our vocabularies, or at least mine did. We encountered words like hyperstition and diegesis. And, pardon me, Jake Versosa, one of the artists. By the way, the four artists that Dindin assembled were Martica Escobar, the filmmaker, Erwin Romulo, the conceptual artist, Derek Tumala, a visual artist, and Jake Versosa, photographer. Jake shared with us powerful images from his previous exhibitions, which also became one of the touch points in the concept making. Oh, sorry. Now came when the artists had to make the trek to IRRI to see what was there, to find out. So they visited the field laboratories and the actual labs and screen houses and dusty offices and archives, as well as a museum that has grown out of time. So these are the stimuli that we provided: visits to the International Rice Gene Bank, to the various labs, including the grain and nutrition quality laboratory, the screen houses, and the experimental fields where they do all this research and studies. They met and came up and had encounters with not just one type of scientist, but several, ranging from agronomists to plant pathologists, geneticists, and soil scientists. So all sorts. And perhaps they can tell you more about it. Some of the artists are present today, I believe. So this is them in action in the various facilities at IRRI where they spent time with. You can see Martica speaking to a young scientist who is talking about alternate wetting and drying system, a method of growing rice that greatly reduces greenhouse gas emission. And so what to do with this stimuli? Yeah? So Martica decided that she was going to create film, and Erwin was going to use timeline as his way of creating his response to science. And Derek was also going to create a sculpture in response to a work of art that he saw at IRRI, that of a Japanese artist, Watanabe, and also for what he observed at the gene bank, collection of wild rice varieties. Jake visited the IRRI photo archives, and we left it to him to decide what to create from them. And so this was what we had planned, the broad concept. It was going to be a small exhibition area that PICC gave us, and the space was to encapsulate the artist's response to the scientist's works. And the focus was going to be on food security within the context of the climate crisis. But instead of this being a group exhibition, we decided that artists would respond to each other's works. I don't know if this is a unique phenomenon, but that is how it was when we eventually decided what the shape of the exhibition would be. And so it all came together on the 15th of October when we set it all up. And voila, on the 16th, when the Congress opened, you could find this exhibition right smack at this lobby between the registrations counter and the media lobby. And in speaking to the people who first came to see them, we knew that they were bewildered, pleasantly bewildered, because this was the first. They were wondering what an art exhibition was doing at the center of a scientific conference. But this was the largest, by far, attendance to the International Rice Congress. We had over 2,000 attendees, participants, and all 2,000 plus of them came to see and watch and hear and listen what was going on at the center of the lobby. And we had more great reviews than not so good ones. And in fact, there was very few of questions about what it was doing in the Science Congress. Yes, and on the fourth and final day of IRC, we opened the exhibition to non-delegates, and because we organized an event, an activity, as Art and Science in Conversation. Our principal scientist and chair of the IRC committee, Dr. Bas Baumann, sat down with our 4 artists and an enthusiastic audience and talked about the synergies between art and science. And personally, for me, it was exhilarating to see our scientists respond to how their works were interpreted or how they were seen by, not by their peers, but people outside their discipline. And so this was what happened on the final day of the exhibition. I will leave you with the final paragraph of our exhibition notes, which was call to action. Climate change may be a science phenomenon, but the work, the solutions cannot be exclusively be the work of scientists or of science. To be sustainable, everyone, all of us have to work together to find the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Belen. Maybe later we can hear from some of the artists. Parang nawala na yung isa. He left. Anyway, baka pabalik. Okay, for our third speaker, we have Jason D., a Filipino contemporary artist, and I always forget, he's also a Jesuit priest. He is a founder of Alternative Contemporary Art Studio, ACAS, in Cebu City, and is currently a lecturer at the Fine Arts Department of the Ateneo de Manila University. He holds an MA in Art History and Curating from the Liverpool Hope University in the UK. His creative practice investigates the community and studio-based responses to changing religious and cultural circumstances, locations, and events. Today, he will be sharing with us their experience through working with other contemporary artists through the Manila Observatory, specifically through residencies managed through Art Fair Philippines, and Father Jason is the one who coordinates for them. Okay, Father.
Mic this. Sorry. So good afternoon, everyone. I just have a few disclaimers before I begin. On behalf of the Manila Observatory, I would like to thank the collaboration of artists for making this artist residency possible, as well as partnership, of course, with Art Fair Philippines and the sponsorship of Don Paparam. Okay? And the second one is I act as a liaison between Manila Observatory and Art Fair Philippines. In a way, my position is that of an insider as well as an outsider. That is why that position gave me that kind of liminal experience to look at the case of Manila Observatory Artist Residency. And the presentation today is a kind of research that I did in order to understand and assess the program so far. And the methodology were interviews, of course. I gave 3 questions to the artists as well as to the institutions to understand the challenges, learnings, and recommendations. In research, external research, and actual interaction with artists and with the institution. So for the presentation today, I divided it into 3 parts. The first one is a kind of overview of the Manila Observatory as an art residency, as well as the history and programs of the Manila Observatory. And the second one would be looking at the projects that were created by Derek, IC, and Mark. And the last one would be concrete challenges, learnings, and recommendations. When you look at the residency program brief, it's actually quite artist-centered, in a sense that the residency hope that the artist will interact with the technology and facilities of the Manila Observatory. And in his interaction with the Manila Observatory technology and facilities, there would be an awareness of the programs related to science disaster, as well as awareness of climate change. And maybe from that kind of awareness, they can make a kind of response and create a project. But maybe it's good to highlight as well that this kind of expected interaction would be, in a way, veering towards the artist, not from the institution. Perhaps in the future, there can be an expectation, interaction of the scientists themselves. So just a brief overview of the Manila Observatory to understand its context and the changes as a scientific and research institution that started during the Spanish period. Okay, so established in 1865 as part of the mission of Jesuits in the Philippines. Perhaps that's why I'm here, because I'm also speaking on behalf of the Jesuits. The second one is in 1879, it became a tool for warning the community, especially in typhoon situation. And in 1880, embarked on earthquake observations. Okay? In 1884, the Spanish government issued a royal decree that the Manila Observatory becomes an official Philippine institution for weather forecasting. And the seismology section was added in 1887. And 2 years later, it ventures into astronomical studies. So there's a telescope there that you can watch the heavenly bodies, especially Jupiter and Saturn, but it's not available now. Okay. And during the American colonial period, the observatory became the Philippine Weather Bureau of the Philippines. And during the World War II, many things were destroyed, the building, the equipment, okay? And it's only after the war that re-established itself in 1951 in Baguio City. Actually, in Baguio Mirador, you can still find the station there. Okay, it's not functional, but it can be part of the archival of this institution. And in 1963, it's transferred to its present location at the Loyola Heights campus in Ateneo de Manila, where it's continued its seismic, geomagnetic, and radiophysics research, and expanding into solar physics as well. I'd like to highlight some of the programs that could be possible for artists to engage in, and maybe some of them were engaged by the 3 artists that we feature in the residency. The first one is interdisciplinary research. It is a kind of engagement with scientific fields with social sciences, so that science is also coupled by understanding how society and the people living in it and how they are also affected by economics and how they live in that particular community. And one of the important research policy there was about helping communities understand disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. You can check the documents online. The second one is Klima. It's about policy and action. It's really how Manila Observatory is engaging with society. It aims to provide science-based policy and decision support, technical assistance, capacity building, and information, education, communication to stakeholders and also partners. One of their projects was during the Bonn Climate Change Conference, accelerating mitigation efforts in Asia Pacific. The third one is upper atmospheric dynamics, where they have to understand the space weather patterns, and in using some theories and observational instruments in order to understand like pollution. One of their studies in 2024 is a particle pollution measurement in Metro Manila and other local urbanized areas in the Philippines. The fourth one is that they're not just centered here in Manila, but also in the different areas in the Philippines to provide adequate scientific guidance to mitigate disaster and long-term climate adaptation policy. And one of their studies were Typhoon Pablo last December 2012. And they also work on instrument and technology to use for scientific investigation and environment monitoring and rehabilitation. And when the artists visited the Manila Observatory, they were interested in the technology and the facilities simply because some of them are modern and highly technologically advanced, but some of them are also antiquated. So you can get a glimpse of the past and the current instruments. There's also geomatics for environment and development to track temporal and spatial movements in order to map out social and environmental information needed to guide the sustainable agenda of the local communities. And one other project is hazards, exposure, vulnerability, capacity risk, and impacts mapping. And the last two would be the solid earth dynamics. This is related to earthquake, the seismic station, to monitor and analyze, contribute earthquake data, and they provide data to international institutions. For example, Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, International Seismological Center, National Earthquake Information Center. Okay? And the last one is Resiliency Collaboratory, to strengthen the capacity of communities to be resilient, especially those who are exposed to frequent hazards. And one of their studies there is collaboration with coastal cities at risk in the Philippines, investigating a climate and disaster resilience projects. And the last one, this is the space where most artists are engaging in terms of the Manila Observatory, is the Manila Observatory archives, okay? And many of the archives are actually research conducted by the scientists, both Jesuits and the lay, from its beginning until now. And we're happy that during World War II, the archives were preserved, okay? So you have institutional records, personal records, data records, photographs, and maps. So that's about the Manila Observatory. And the second part is I'll be discussing with you the three projects that came out from the residency programs. The first one is, the first artist is Derek Tumala. The title of the project was Tropical Climate Forensics. Okay? And in my interview with him, he said that the initial project was to create a website on typhoon histories and extreme predictions in the Philippines, because there are data of typhoons in the Manila Observatory, and he used those past data in order to predict the future calamities. Okay. And he created this application. This application is interesting because it is interactive, and actually tested it this morning to find what's happening with the current weather. Okay. So it's an online platform with digital animation, and it's quite interactive, and you can actually interact with it real time. And you will see the application being employed in this project. And there's a text there, mga isla ng Pilipinas, forensiko ng klimang tropical, okay? And when I tested this morning, so that's what it showed me, the screenshot of this morning's parang climate, okay? And in Art Review, by the editor of Art Review, he wrote about Great Future, just published a few days ago, and he was trying to comment on the work of Derek, and he said, and I quote, "The country's proximity to the equator," the artist Derek is saying, "can seem to normalize the extreme heat." Okay? But in actuality, the rising temperatures are abnormal. Okay? Tumala's artistic practice, ranging from virtual reality and video to installation, sculpture, drawing, and photography, is an attempt in articulating the effects of climate devastation in a specific geographical context, advocating decolonial ecology. Perhaps my own understanding of this decolonial ecology is an attempt of the artist of giving the local inhabitants the agency to protect their environment and to mitigate climate crisis. Okay? So when you check out the website, you will actually see biomes. Biomes, the first one is Baguio, typhoon. There's also the biome of water, tubig, along with Comunidad. Okay, there's a cluster of houses there called the community, Gubat or forest, and Bulkan volcano. Okay, so actually at 9:01 in the morning, you have the temperature, you have the cloud appearance, and also the wind. And fairly, this is like the biomes of that particular time when I was checking this. And you will see the image icon there of the Manila Observatory. And the Manila Observatory also posted this project, and the way they perceive the project is from this context of Derek researching into the meteorological and seismographic archives of the Manila Observatory and the current data in order to forecast the future and understanding the pattern and climate in the Philippines. And part of the evolving project of Derek is really changing the center, which is an offshoot of this tropical climate forensics, which is also another website. And there's a particular quote there, "The earth, like the human body, is subject to strain, hence the tremors," in a way using the image of biology as also equated to ecology. So those icons you can link, and it will lead you to a video or a photograph. So for example, this is a video entitled Chasing the Center. So you have photographs of taken from the Manila Observatory archives dated June 30, to July 1, 1946. Okay, pre-war time. Okay, and Derek used this photograph like a photo video montage. Okay. And you will also find fragments. It's a series of photographs that he made into a collage. This one is called Hemisphere, consisted of cloud photographs. These are solar flares that were documented at the Manila Observatory. Okay, and these are the equipment like satellites, landscape, both photographs and postcards. Pre-scientists working on the atmospheric observation, some Jesuits and their community, and also the devastation during the war, juxtaposing with atomic bombing, images, and also the destruction. Okay? So, according to him, his residency expanded his own creative knowledge and hard-edged science and how to communicate a rapidly changing world or uncovered histories that he discovered at the archives of the Manila Observatory. The second one is IC, Haushan. And when you look at the title of the work, it is difficult to read. It's like scrambled letters. But they can be decoded, and once you decode it, it seems to suggest the words reasonable uncertainty. Okay, and he was interested in magic. That is the key between science and religion. Okay, and he had this work of an image of Michael and Lucifer based on his research of Marca Demonio motif. No, there's an archangel and the angel is Metatron, triumphant over the demon. Okay, and this kind of characters you'll find in the Jewish scripture as the grandfather of Enoch, as well as an archangel, a celestial scribe. Okay, and he was also mining images from Key of Solomon. And at the Manila Observatory, he was gathering the ratios of Manila Observatory climate prediction data. And he uses a certain methodology using the golden ratio to predict, to construct the Metatron's cube. And he also used the ratios again, the diameters of the Earth and the Moon. Okay, and what was interesting is that he created this installation, but his own personal insights into this kind of process. And according to Portia Placino, in writing an article about him, that Haushan is interested in complicated data that doesn't have answer but challenges us to explore the unknowable. Okay, and from the data given to us by IC, you will see a Venn diagram of faith and science, and in between is magic. Perhaps he's suggesting that in science there is this transformation, perhaps pseudoscience called the alchemy. And the other one in faith is a transformation in terms of renewal, healing, and miracles. And his synthesis is this one. He found a sacred geometry. There's a kind of intelligent being that he discovered in his residency. Perhaps in science and knowledge, there is abstract reasoning through mathematics that become the confluence of science and knowledge. For faith and knowledge is the ritual, wherein ritual becomes a rigorous process in liturgy, but at the same time in learning. And then in science and faith, the intersection is cosmology, where faith is an understanding of the universe, and the creator, and science is a study of universe as matter. Okay? And at the center is the core pattern, where there is an intelligent being, in science and in faith, the divine being. Okay? And lastly, Mark Salvatus's work is entitled Foam, to suggest this movement, fluidity, lightness, and even flow, airflow. Okay? Initially, his project was actually about Banahaw, because he was interested in Mount Banahaw because it's an area from Lukban. And he found that one Jesuit priest, Vicente Manansala, wrote a book about the Banahaw, okay, symbolic deeds of Agapito Illustrate. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to find this document at the Manila Observatory because this document was at Ateneo Press. Okay? And he mined the archives and discovered also the clouds, similar to what Derek discovered. And he discovered the everyday photo again from March 1946 to 1947. Okay? And it was also the time when Manila Observatory was intramuros Manila, a year after the World War II ended. Okay? And right now, you go to the roof deck, you will find the work of Mark Salvatus. Okay? It is a flag showing a black and white image borrowed from the Manila Clouds archives. Okay? And this is the post that Mark shared with me in IG. Okay? So it's a kind of, a flag is like a warning and also a kind of hope. Okay? And Tessa was commenting about how Mark Salvatus was very interested in the materiality of the flag itself, because materials are not just physical properties, but materials have their own narratives and stories and context that you can mine to give a substantial context to your work. Okay? And I think that's the last bit. And maybe just allow me for a few minutes just to share with you the challenges, learning, and recommendations that we discovered during this three-year residency. The first one, in terms of challenges, is cultural barriers of both artists and scientists because of their differing language disciplines. The other one is the artist's interest does not match with the scientific institutions' programs. The third one is when there's no matching, there's a tendency for the artists to be in solitary and independent, doing their own research, and inaccessibility of the scientific institution during the pandemic restrictions. And what are some learnings? The first one is expansion of the artist's creative knowledge of the hard-edged science and how to communicate a rapidly changing world of uncovered histories. The second one is discoveries of signs of intelligent design. The third one, employment of online platforms like Zoom for meetings, orientation, exchanges. And lastly, accessibility of archives, grounds, instruments, materials in the scientific institution. And what is interesting for me will be the recommendation. There are quite many, but I'd just like to read them as to end my presentation this afternoon. The first one is provide scientists with workshops related to art science affiliation to enrich your interest, as well as exposure to contemporary art practices. The second one, create more collaborative open call. For example, choose a laboratory to collaborate with and create a work with artists, and or a studio to collaborate with scientists. And thirdly, expand artistic circles. And number 4, suggest a dedicated arts program within scientific institutions to explore multimedia communications and dynamic programs. Okay? Third to the last, encourage scientific institutions to engage with art as an independent discipline and discourse, not just for the service of scientific projects and programs. And the second, let's explore interaction between art and science. There are a lot of overlaps that can bridge both areas, but can also be beneficial for both of them. And lastly, exhibition and educational programs at the scientific and educational institutions. Thank you and good afternoon.